But today's largely just a communicative. It's going to be me talking to you about what I'm seeing, signals that I've been getting back, the reason why we're doing this, and why you also would be interested in this. But great place to start is how this the big picture of how this works. And the idea, again, if you weren't here last week or if you have not seen the video, is that a developer using VS Code would be able to for now use some hand rolled plugins that we've created for them in order to communicate with Microsoft 365 data using natural language. And so far we've actually rolled out email, the ability to send and receive email. Today, we actually, actually, it's yesterday, technically. Yesterday, we actually merged into the main branch the ability now to write calendar. Before we could only read. So now you can actually write an event and actually read events from a person's calendar using natural language. Contacts, your ability to read contacts. Think of that analogous to if you already have a user entity inside other system of records, Azure being one of, sorry, Entra being one of them, or also any other SaaS application. You may actually want to call the person's name rather than providing email address. So context is how we're actually doing that here. And then soon we'll be having another API, which I just can't mention here today, plus files, the ability to read and write files. And the way that we have done that right now is by using an open source tool called Kyoto in order to do that, but we are moving towards doing that in TypeSpec. And the reason why is because TypeScript will allow us to create a more lighter weight plugin and more prescriptive, so you don't have to massage it that much. And why you would want to massage it as well is because depending on your use case and your story, and also the model that you choose, your mileage could vary in terms of just the validity and accuracy of the responses that you get. But all of that goes into a semantic kernel plugin, which is we're using an extension method in semantic kernel in order to do that. That allows you to communicate with all of these services down here, and that surfaces it up as an application or a custom engine agent that you can actually enter into a response with. So that's my framing. So the advanced consideration that we're going to talk about here today is really around how does this tie into the agent framework and when you'd want to use this. And the best place to start is just to think about how we Microsoft have been talking about agents, right? The agent paradigm or the agent framework has at its very lowest layer the foundational models that are there that everyone builds on top of. And then we at Microsoft, we also have our own orchestrator that that sits on top of those foundational models, and it interacts with knowledge that we provide through instructions and grounding, skills that are native out of the box, and also later on, some type of autonomy, and all of that service up inside a display layer. That the one canvas can be Teams, the other canvas can be BizChat, and so on and so forth. The way that works in a declarative agent, again, it's built upon the foundational models that we that we have inside Azure. The orchestrator is managed by Microsoft, so there's not much that you can do about it in terms of manipulating that. And the user experience is also controlled by Microsoft. And what you can bring as a declarative agent in terms of knowledge is your own instructions and your own grounding. By adding that knowledge into the manifest. And in terms of skills, you can leverage, what traditionally we'll call plugins in order to reach it outside to get, just-in-time actions and capabilities that are there. So within the declarative agent framework, you can see there are some stuff that Microsoft manages that you don't necessarily have control over, but there are some things where you do have control over, as you can see in the dotted or the and trail line. However, you take that a step further. Let me advance a little bit. There we go. Take it a step further. When you think about custom engine agents, and in this light with semantic kernel, what we're providing, and what we unlock using CAPS is the ability for full control. So not only can you bring your own foundational models, but you can bring your own finely tuned model, your own small language model. You have full control over the orchestrator. You have the ability to bring your own RAI, your own skills, which you could have done with a DA as well, but really unlock all of your skills and also your own knowledge and instructions. And why is this important more than the other way that you can do it? Is because you could be looking at knowledge and instructions that may span multiple different data sources. So you may have some stuff inside a blob storage, like images. You may have stuff in table storage, like raw data. You may have stuff inside another SaaS application or your own internal API, and you may even want to aggregate all of that for the LLM to reason over rather than doing one at a time, depending on your user story. And that is also where the orchestrator and having full control over that would come into play. So, let's break this down one by one, and I'll tell you what I've been hearing from customers and the reason why this may either align to you as well or is something to consider. So customers have told us that they want more control over their models, and the way that they've described this is a few ways, but the ones that resonate and are top of mind is not necessarily around the foundational models themselves or the fine-tuned models, but more so the embedding model. As people have different data in different locations, the way that they create the chunks by which, if they're doing a RAG pattern, the ability to have the coastline similarity and nearest neighbor is by defining chunks. So if you have a long, let's say a long PDF document, how you chunk that will also determine the effectiveness of how the prompt can reason over it. So you may be using a different embedding algorithm. So that's your own model. And you don't necessarily control that when you are using our system in terms of ingesting your own knowledge and then having our prompts and our orchestrator reason over it. It's basically going to be using our embedding model, our algorithms. So that's one reason why people will want to do that. And the way that could take shape and the way that we actually leverage this inside CAPS is that we afford you the ability to choose also between Azure OpenAI, or like me sometimes using Olama. And you can see an example down at the bottom here as well, where you can actually see me, just testing out. And this may be one of the reasons why I may want to use something like a CAPS as well. You know that your mileage could vary. You also want to reduce your own cost. And in fact, what you may find is that you may want to discretely use maybe a small language model for certain activities, and then a large language model for other activities, either for a cost saving or for performance benefits. I'll tell you right now that the and this is before I actually use 5.4, the 5.4 model that I used recently for math and computational stuff, it far goes way faster than what Llama is able to do. But now I've been playing around with DeepSeek, with Llama, with Llama Boat Vision, and also Llama Instruct. And you may want to do that just to test things out. And even in something that I'm actually working on this week for FHL, I actually have something where it's working as an Azure function, and Azure function does the outside bit of it, and then I actually have an Azure function running locally on my machine that looks inside Azure Blob Storage or something, and then pulls it down, and then my local model starts to reason over it. But having full control over your model gives you that flexibility. And as I mentioned before, you may also want something where you may have some different source of records. In this instance here, you can see this example that I created that's using Microsoft Graph and using the changelog. We actually are pulling stuff directly from a website, and we want to have full control over how we reason over that. We only want the history, only the user input, and also leverage certain plugins as well. Or if, as I mentioned before, you may have something in a blob container, and you may have things in like a receipt or a photos and a feedback and stuff like that, and you want to aggregate that data inside there. So when you have different sources of records and you need to do your own plugins or your own aggregation, you may want to leverage something like a custom agent plugin, custom engine agent, and leverage something like CAPS in order to do that. Moreover, customers have told us that they want to leverage their own native APIs and their native skills. Unless you're starting this company day one and it's brand spanking new, obviously you may have your own APIs that are already out there already, and you may want to just leverage that either for faster time to market or better code reuse, or in this case, you may have CAPS where we've hand rolled something for you, and you want to just start using that so you can get to market quicker. So here's an example how you may have your own plugins and you want to bring that directory in, or you may want to reference it inside your code. Leveraging CAPS, leveraging the semantic kernel gives you the ability to do that. And if you have an open API specification, this is 10 times easier. when you think about art, this is something to a lesser extent, and I would say it's very niche because whenever I talk to people about is RAI important? Usually, in a certain community, like first responders, military, law enforcement, those people usually say yes because of the nature of what they're doing. Leveraging our RAI may be a little bit too prescriptive because you're talking about stuff that may get flagged, whether it's patient information, it's gruesome in nature. It talks about things that are maybe possibly sensitive in terms of just what society would deem normal, and the RAI may flag that for whatever reason. But you leveraging CAPS, leveraging semantic kernel, have full control over that as well. Customers may also want, and this by far, the orchestrator, this is the biggest one that I've seen in terms of what customers want to see. They may not necessarily want to use our orchestrator, and you can bring LangChain here as well. I know that LangChains are very popular. LangChain and LangGraph. Semantic kernel obviously is what we're using predominantly because you can have .NET support, you have Python support as well, and Java support. But bring your own orchestrator is what we actually say as well in this model. And one of the reasons why I may want to do that, using this example that I've actually built using CAPS, is the ability to tell it how you want it to orchestrate. I only want you to choose from this participants if I'm using an agentic framework to do this. Only use the agent, calendar agent, the contact agent, the legal secretary agent, the chief of staff agent. And also, if you see these items inside the prompt, leverage this person. And the last person out the door needs to be this. And then you may also want to create your own termination strategy, when to tell it when to stop and stuff like that. Otherwise, keep trying. So this, when you're using CAPS, when you're using semantic kernel, and by the way, this is a semantic kernel example, where you can actually see we're defining the prompt function strategy, and for the selection of which agent to use and how to terminate, you get to control that as well. And finally, there may be something as branding. You already built your mobile application, you already built your website, you already built your intranet or your internet, and you may want to leverage that. So again, this is my FHL Fix Hack Learn demo that I'm working on this week. It's not quite there yet, but basically it has its own branding, which is the reason why this picture is here. So I'm building a little tool that actually leverages CAPS right now, and it gets information. You may have seen on LinkedIn, I've been playing around with this brewery stuff that I've been building. This actually is something I'm building out here for FHL as well. But you can see how leveraging its own branding, you can actually have the LLM be a part of that experience rather than doing it that way.